Hey Pepper Gang, there are many raw resources you're going to be farming in the front, and some of them you're going to be using over and over and over, especially as you start refining resources once and twice over. I'm going to list the raw farmable resources you're going to find, where to find them, tricks to get more per farm run, and what you're going to be refining them into. Several of these you won't need until later levels, but it's not a bad idea to start farming them early on for XP and stashing them away. Hopefully by the end of this video, you're more prepared as starting your front journeys. And as always, check out my Twitch live stream, where you can ask further questions if I'm live or drop them in the comments down below. I do want to point out that when it comes to farming, if you want the most bang for your buck, most resources per item and node, you need the best blueprint you can make and possibly buff some talents for productivity as well. The better the blueprint and tool, the more efficient those farm runs will be. There are also mines around the map that have concentrated spots for specific ores protected by NPCs. Haven't explored the map entirely and don't have all the mines discovered. I would just recommend to keep a farm tool on you as you roam around the map and mark mines as you see them. But with that, let's get into it. Starting with the most common item, wood. You're always going to be using it for refining resources, and the carbon powder it turns into, used for gunpowder, graphite, and steel. So you need to keep it as well. Once you have a grinding table, I recommend always grinding wood into resin, since you use that often for crafting alone. Wood should be the easiest resource to find. Along with wood comes fiber. Fiber is what you're going to need for maintaining base repairs through your space beacon. That's where I store mine. I never seem to run out of fiber. Along with wood, you're always going to be using it. I like to take excess fiber and craft rope on my inventory if I'm not crafting anything currently. It helps to always craft something for the small passive XP gains. Next is stone. I consider it the third most popular resource. Stone is literally everywhere, and you gain much of it from farming other nodes. You use it for many early crafts, structures, and eventually need to refine it into lime, which is used for concrete and higher end crafts like batteries. Stone is also extremely useful for the advanced refinement feature in the smelter. It turns 3 stone into a random node, just iron, copper, or salt. I'm constantly using this feature. Now on to plant mucus. You can see that in the thumbnail. Plant mucus seems to be tough for many players to farm efficiently, and it comes from bushes, plants, and cactuses, but they don't always drop it. You also need to take plant mucus to refine it to rubber, which is needed for guns, gear, and more. So plant mucus is a very desirable resource. It's not always the easiest to get. So having the best sickle in hand always helps. Mine is legendary and helps the drop rate for mucus from plants in the wild. But in my opinion, the best way to farm plant mucus is to literally farm it in your base. I personally set up a fern farm, and every few hours, I harvest it and gain over 220 mucus on average, which I refine into about 80 rubber. Ever since I set up a functional farm with decent conditions and fertilizer, mucus hasn't been an issue and I have all the rubber in the world. Definitely look into farming. Now let's move on to iron. I find the most iron nodes in the desert biome. I find a lot less in the snow, and they're mainly on the upper parts of the mountainside. Iron is the most used metal I use in crafting because it's required in so many steps. In addition to farming it with a jackhammer every time I see it, I turn a lot of my stone into iron through the advanced refinement feature. Iron ore is also used to refine steel when combined with carbon powder, so you also want to set some more aside for your steel production. If you're a small team or a solo, I would farm every iron node you see if possible. Trust me, you're always going to need it. Now, lead is a more common resource. It's a gray node that shines a little bit. I don't really struggle finding it. It seems the snow has an abundance of lead ore. You will mainly craft ammo for weapons and turrets with lead, and some vehicle parts as well. It can also come from the stone advanced refinement. On to copper, this yellow shiny node. I find it wherever I find iron, but I do see a bit more copper than iron in the snow. It's used in electronics, some weapon crafts, and I would say besides iron, I'm using copper the most in crafting. The desert does seem to have a nice concentration of copper. Like iron, I just wouldn't pass up on it if you see it if you're farming outside. The advanced refinement feature also gives you copper ore, so I do recommend you're constantly turning stone if you can't find copper or iron. Now, one of the most valuable resources you will want ASAP is salt. Salt is what the Chads love to farm because it helps create gunpowder, which we need for anything fun and explosive. Salt is pretty rare though. You won't find salt nodes in the snow, jungle, or grassy areas. You primarily find salt on the beaches of the desert, along the southern coast of the map, or in the mine. However, to make up for its rarity, you can also get it from the stone advanced refinement, which is a lifesaver. Once again, another reason to be refining that stone. Now, as you level up and upgrade your base to electricity and use vehicles, you will need a lot of gasoline and polymer. Both come from crude oil. Crude oil spawns in these black dirt mounds around the map that you use a shovel to get. The better the shovel, the more you get per hit. I see a lot of these mounds in the snow and desert, not so much in the jungle. The crude oil is refined into polymizer into gas, and if combined with resin, turns into polymer. I recommend getting an oil shaft built in your base as soon as you unlock it because it feels like a cheat code. It will passively farm oil, sand, and clay for you. Whenever I log on after a night of sleep, I have about 300 to 400 crude oil and they're waiting for me. I just refine the polymizer to gasoline, put the gasoline to the generator, which connects to the well, and it just keeps recycling. It literally feels like a cheat code. I could see the production of this nerfed over time because it's so good. But if you don't have an oil well, you can also build a manual drill early on that works the same. It just takes a little longer to farm the mats. Since I mentioned clay and sand, you use both for structures and certain base items. Clay can be found in brown dirt mounds, similar to crude oil ones along river banks. You use a shovel to get them as well. And you get sand from these mounds too, as well as when you mine rocks and desert rocks. And in general, it's a very easy resource to farm. It's also needed to make silicon, which is refined in the smelters. Silicon is used a lot in the electronics crafts down the road. I stashed quite a lot of silicon before I even started crafting with it. The last two nodes I'll touch on is tungsten and titanium. They both spawn mainly in the snow towards the top of the mountain. They have these crystals that sit on top of what looks like a normal rock, and both materials are used for endgame crafts and structures. I just started getting into this part of the game, so I haven't used them too much, but I do recommend just stashing these ores over time so you have a nice stack once you unlock the crafts. I found the nodes don't give you much per hit, even with a jackhammer. They're definitely very rare materials, so like iron and copper, don't pass up on these. And the last resource I'll touch on is hide, which you get from animals. It turns into leather, used for gear and armor mainly. These are the raw resources you guys will need to be acquainted as a new player. I hope this breakdown helps your experience as new players and helps you better prepare for future crafts and levels. But that's it for this one, guys. Look out for future front videos. Check out the rest of the channel. I have other survival and extraction games on it. And thank you for watching this far. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.